talk a little bit more about the process between us. I'm going to hand it off to Dan Jellin.
Yeah, I'm Dan Jellin. I think I was born at Wizards. I've been there for almost 20 years now. I've worked on a card game you might have heard of, Magic Gathering, did some cards, did some graphic design. The last 4 or 5 years, I've been on the D&D team. And actually, first off, a show of hands here. How many people have ever played the pen and paper Dungeons and Dragons? Okay, so you know what kobolds are. When Joe came to us and said, we want to do kobolds, we all thought we knew what kobolds were too. Kobolds have been in the game since the very first edition, almost 40 years now. And they've changed a little bit. First edition, all the art was done by Gary Gygax's and Dave Arneson's friends, some great artists. But they based their designs off of whatever they felt like drawing. A lot of them were based off of little toys they had. So first edition has some really sort of odd concepts. The kobold were little dog men, but they had scaled skin. As we go through the editions, became little lizard men that worship dragons. And our books are maybe around 10–15% art, so we really don't have that many images of kobolds. Through the whole history of the game, all 38 years of the game, we have probably around 25 to 30 images of kobolds. In every edition, they change. Third edition was the first time in the history of the game that we actually decided to do an art style guide. So we thought, oh, third edition, we're going to lock in all the looks from here on out. And that worked pretty well, but as the edition went through the years, the art directors stopped using the style guide, which is why you get green skin kobolds. We have a creative director now, a guy by the name of John Shinhetti, who's reining everything. Towards the end of 4th and 5th edition, we're unifying everything. Forgotten Realms is going to be our major push, so we want to make sure everything's right. So looking through this stuff, we sort of went through the history of what kobolds were, what they should be, and unanimously we liked the 3rd edition ones. So that was the direction we gave to Joe, was to go with the 3rd edition ones. That's back to Joe.
All right, we're going to move on and talk a bit about environments. So again, going to the source. And since we are doing Neverwinter, handy that we have a Neverwinter campaign guide to reference. And we seriously, literally take pages straight out of that book as our starting point. And so, for example, Velosk has key locations listed in it, including like the totem pit, where werewolves battle each other to prove who's most werewolfy. They have the Shadow Keeper's Hut, the Stormcaller Shrine. There's all these key locations. And we have to take all of this information, bring it all together in a kickoff meeting at Cryptic, and design presents what they want to do, what they want to feature, what locations are key, and then we hand that off to a concept artist. And we come out of that meeting knowing, in the very least, what the fundamental zone is. In this case, it's werewolves in a mountain forest. And so I presented that to our concept artist, and I said, look, these are a couple key points we need to kind of feature in a high-level concept, but then find something, some way to get the essence of this zone across. How do you make it feel like a werewolf zone? And with a big freaking wolf-shaped mountain, of course. So backing up a little bit, I gave him this direction, and he kind of did a rough sketch as a half joke, because he knows that I'm like constantly asking for bigger, crazier, higher fantasy. And again, though we put it in as a joke, took a look at it, and it really hit the mark. It has that fantasy vibe. It screams werewolf. I mean, it makes you want to go to that environment. At this stage in the process, we aren't as concerned with actual layout or how the flow of the zone goes. This is really just kind of a mood piece. But you can still see in the bottom, the base of the mountain, you can see the totem pit, and that's where the werewolves will fight. And the red fiery totem, that's the Stormcaller Shrine. And so we want to have like these key elements. And of course, if you have a big wolf-shaped mountain, you've got to host the boss fight in the actual fiery maw of that. So again, though, we're kind of taking a lot of this information from the source material but kind of running with it. And we need to check in again with WotC and make sure that what we're doing is cool. And we present the high-level concepts to them. WotC really dug it. They like the Wolf Mountain, but then there is some interaction, like how do we tie this into the lore? And the history of this particular tribe of werewolves, it's a Uthgard barbarian tribe. They did some dealings with nefarious Netherese, and so we wrapped that into the story that, you know, this is a magical mountain and it has the Netherese influence. And talk a little bit more about the cross influence that we have between Wizards of the Coast and Cryptic. I'm going to hand it back to Dan.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Velasquez real fast again, too.
Yeah.
Cryptic was already working on the Neverwinter game when we started doing the source book, so it was very much a collaboration. A lot of that stuff are ideas that they had that then we flushed out. When we're doing areas, especially areas, we might have landmarks, but you're playing in the theater of your mind, so you really don't need giant mountains and stuff in the background. In the source book, it's basically just an area with a bunch of Uthgard barbarians who are werewolves in it. And if you're playing that pen and paper, that would be fine. When you're playing in the game, it's unbelievably fantastic that you have this giant landmark that you can see from wherever you are and really orient to. And it just looks epic and it looks fun. So that's something that Cryptic's really excited with. When we have static images, we never think about it. It's going to be an environment, it's going to be a single picture you see once, and then you make up stuff about it in your head. When you're playing the Neverwinter game, you're actually living in the environments. You're moving around, you're seeing things from different angles, and it really is starting us to think about how we look at things differently too.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Helmshold cross-reference, or can do that?
Well, Helmshold is another one of those areas where Helmshold first appears in 2 or 3 source books in 2nd edition, so that's early 80s. Second edition?
98.
Oh, late 80s.
Yeah.
80s and 90s, 2000s, 3rd edition. All right, well, here's
So
the
years,
research.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's
So
usually a long time ago.
I think it appears in a total of 3 source books. 2 of them have the exact same information, and it amounts to maybe 200 words. It's a single paragraph. Since 2nd edition, the timeline has gone forward, and in the Forgotten Realms, Neverwinter takes place around 100, 120 years from 2nd edition. So Helm's home, hold, becomes sort of this open playground for them. They sort of know it's a monastery, and they know it's there on the map, it's an official place. But then,
So, I mean, we took that basic information and we actually started this a couple years ago, very early in the game. And it was like one of our first subs was making Helmshold, and we finally were visualizing a lot of stuff that hadn't been actually like drawn or anything. And that first pass, that's what you see on the left side of the slide. That was our concept piece for it, and we presented that back to Wizards of the Coast, and that in turn influenced their Neverwinter campaign guide. So that actually came in after we had started Helmshold. And so the art on the right is from the Neverwinter campaign guide. But then again, it's cross-reference or cross-influence. And we took all that information, the new stuff from Helmshold in Neverwinter campaign guide, and when we decided to revisit Helmshold for development, we're like, okay, take all this information, what do we pull from it? And again, how do we get like these huge, awesome, epic landmarks like Dan was mentioning in game? And so we did another pass on the actual concept for Helmshold, made it a lot more imposing. It has more of a cathedral-like look to kind of homage to the fact that it is supposed to be a holy location. And it's also very castle-like and fortress-like, which is to symbolize the strength and protective qualities of the dead god Helm. And then continuing on with collaboration, when we moved into working on the River District, we are now calling it, the portion that we are working on is the Tower District. And we took the reference from the River District, which is inhabited by orcs. The particular tribe is the Many Arrows orcs, and working with WotC and presenting this to them and finding out what we can do with it, they recommended, that we push some of the symbols and really get across the fact that it's a particular tribe and that these are orcs. Luckily, WotC already had a symbol for Grunch, which is the deity that they worship, and the image on the left, the triangle and the eye of Grunch. There was no art for the many arrows specifically, so we had our concept artists create many arrows, orcs symbol, and these then are distributed all over the place, like painted on all the environments. Another thing that we take from this information is, of course, learning that orcs are very brutal, rugged, horrible, and they aren't necessarily going to build their own cities from scratch. They move in to existing shelters and then kind of build up fortifications on top of that. And what we have to do as a game development studio, and a relatively small one for the size of an MMO that we're doing, we have to be really smart where we devote our time. And so for every zone, we typically do a kit, a zone kit. And what that is it's a collection of assets that are similar and modular that we can kind of build on top of each other and distribute throughout almost the whole zone that give it a unique feel so that you really feel like you're in that particular zone. So for Velosk, a lot of it was some of the rocks and trees actually was the kit. For Protector's Enclave, it's the main city, so a lot of those are actual buildings and they're built very modularly. For the Tower District with the orcs, we decided on just building orc bolt-ons, and we take our existing city assets and then with a relatively small number of actual assets that we build, we're able to just modularly place this all over, and it creates a completely unique, awesome, distinctive look for the zone. And so what you see here is what is in the final game after all that comes together. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Orcs is another one of those things. We have more than 25 to 30 pieces of orc art, but we really don't have very much an orc culture. It's described in the books, in the novels, but art-wise, very little. So Joe asked me, do you have any orc buildings and stuff? And I sort of scratched my head and said, no, we don't. So Joe came forth with some ideas, and I said, go for it. And what he turned around was fantastic. We all loved it. I actually have the concept art hanging up in the desk at work.
Nice.
But this is another one of those collaboration moments that we didn't have. We have an internal team that does 3D art, but it's really making CAD models for the miniatures. But we wanted to do some orc structures and stuff to go with the minis. So we were experimenting around with actually constructing. Some of the buildings they did is those 3D CAD models.
Cool. And closing the loop on some of this other art that I showed. So high-level velocity, again, not taking into account any gameplay space or anything like that, just to get the essence. But we still retain that essence in the final game assets. And so we have this big, badass, freaking flaming mouth wolf in the background, right in front of a giant full moon. And then the boss area and the actual in-game version. And I'm going to hand this back off to Randy to talk about the zone workflow.
Yeah, and so you kind of get a general idea of our back and forth process we do with design and art. I'm going to go back a little bit and talk a little bit more about Helm's Hold as our conceptual example. We'll step through the different elements of Helm's Hold, since it is what's featured in the Neverwinter setting. So again, we went back to the Neverwinter Guide and the Helm's Hold source material. The Neverwinter Guide had the most recent elements of it, and of course we researched a lot of the older references to it as well. In the current storyline of the game, it is a monastery village to the dead god Helm. It is now converted to house spell-plague victims. There's a lot of colorful characters that are involved in the setting. One of them is a woman known as Rohini the Prophet. These are spoilers, by the way, in case you haven't been playing a Neverwinter campaign right now. Anyways, the Rohini the Prophet is, if you know a little bit more about her background, is surreptitiously taking in a bunch of these spell-plague victims and trying to help them. But actually, she is a devil with ties to the Ashmedai cult, worshippers of Asmodeus. So, whole cadre of devils with her. There's also, if you're more sources from materials, there's a bunch plague change victims in the sanatorium that are involved with Falsapon there as well. Nearby in the woods, and the source material, there's werewolves from Velosk, and there's also, underneath it, Rohini actually has control of a corrupted green dragon named Chertilifax. So you have a lot of these different critters and environments that we're drawing from the source materials. But one of the things that we really want to focus on was just, okay, we really want to focus on Rohini and the Ashmedai cult and really bring those elements out of the zone. So that's where we put the pitch process to Wizards and to call out, we already have zones heavily featuring werewolves, like you saw in the Velosk zone, and we have like whole storylines involving the spell plague within the city of Neverwinter. Can we focus on Rohini and her ties to the Ashmedai? And so we, ask that question to Wizards.
Yes.
And that's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, we had a great conversation about it, and we get the design pitch and it says this is the rationale for it, and again, going back to the Neverwinter guide and how our design team constructed it, it's built to support a variety of different approaches to the region, and this fit with the lore, it fit with the region, fit with Helm's Hold, so it works.
And so once they say yes, we go back and we start on fleshing out the zone framework. And when we do the zone framework, we actually start off with a bunch of paper mock-ups, and really we do go back to the old grid maps and quick little 2D mock-ups of the overhead maps and where the zone flow is going to go. We expand out, once we sign off on that internally, we start doing white boxing, right? Where sometimes it's literally we put white boxes to represent the actual game place areas and start filling them with these discs that represent different types of encounters in that area. So it's like, oh, this is a safe area, this is where you encounter a bunch of NPCs, and as you go into the woods, you'll encounter these orcs, which, since we don't have the assets built, will be represented by this disc. Right?
So in this example, I mean, the walls themselves, very placeholder, ugly, just slapped in there to represent the castle-ish walls. And in this example, this is actually the old Helm's Hold that we did on the first pass during our development. And we just plopped that down as placeholder just to fill that space so that you can get a feel for the gameplay space.
And with the white boxing, it just really gives us a sense of where we want to place everything. And we keep things very simple at this point so we can actually move things around. Like we literally jump in the world as a character, run around the gameplay space, and be very conscious of what we're revealing to the players as they kind of run through and explore the world. So when they come around the corner and see the Helm's Cathedral, or witness a bunch of Ashmedai cultists that are gathered in the forest or something, and you go, whoa, what's going on here? And you kind of explore and discover those types of things as you play the game, and it's a really good feeling when you set this up right. So we really kind of come up with an asset list of the type of things we need. We need woods, monastery, village surrounding the monastery, crypts beneath the actual Helm's Hold, sanatorium where they house the spell plague victims, and of course, I mentioned the green dragon Chertilifax. He has a lair somewhere, so there's going to be a dragon there hidden somewhere in the zone. And since we really kind of focused on the devils and the Ashmedai cult that's in the area, we of course have a lot of devil assets, which you saw a little bit. And we start off with the source material, convert them into character asset models, and then of course we touch on like a little bit of the plague change, then the key characters like Rohini the Prophet and the actual green dragon Chertilifax. Once we get these assets back from art, when Joe's team has basically done everything, design team starts hooking everything up and replacing the encounter templates with actual like encounters of different types, the costumes of the characters, etc. And it's an iterative process. Like as we go through, even for the early stages, we play it a lot internally. We sometimes fly Wizards of the Coast down so they can run through and play through the zone, and we get a lot of really good feedback as to how the environment is playing, what the general feel of the environment is total. And a really good example is one of the times it came down and we had Helm's Hold in its earlier state. There's actually the second iteration of it, where we came up with the basic geometry of this really big imposing structure. But because we really pushed the devils and the Ashkai cult taking over this monastery of the Dead God Helm, wanted to give it more of a corrupted feeling, and that was one of the major feedback points. It's like, well, it doesn't feel corrupted, dark, and evil enough. And so the end result, we changed things over, changed the lighting, changed the sky files, and ended up with this, really dark, imposing. It's like, hey, it's some evil going on here. Judging by this.
Yeah, again, it's definitely a team effort, and because it's so iterative, we have people internally playing the game very frequently, and like Randy said, we will even fly Wizards of the Coast, some of the people down to our location so that they play test the game, and that feedback is crucial, and it makes the game better. It makes a better experience for the players, and that's the end result.
Yeah, we actually play a lot more, even more routinely than that. We're in several times a week at this point now, and looking at new zones probably before you guys really want us to sometimes, and sending feedback.
They can actually play on their own site as well, and they can access that. But it is absolutely valuable though having them in person too and being able to discuss things as well. But yeah, we're getting their feedback again once a week. We are on the phone with them. It's very frequent.
Cool. At this point, we actually have a Comic-Con exclusive. It is we've got a Helm's Hold trailer.
Yeah, it's a brand new trailer. No one's seen it yet, so we'll roll it and see what you guys think.
Hopefully this will